Ron and I were talking a couple weeks ago about what we should go over at this judging seminar. And really we couldn't come up with anything interesting other than just going over rulings and kind of getting everybody ready for Battle Road of how that craziness is going to work. And one of the things that Ron and I, and just chit-chatting about different things, we started talking about the fact that a lot of the players that are involved in the game, they come to the leagues, they come to the local events, they don't go to anything big, even at a states and regionals level in some cases with the players. So they have no idea who the bosses in Pokemon are. They have no idea who people like Dave Schwimmer, who Pete DeShaw, any of those guys are. They have no clue. So when you have players that are at events, they look at whoever's on the staff, whoever's running the event, they look at those people as being the people that run Pokemon, being in charge of everything. I know Ron and I both have had people that have just flat asked us if we work directly for Pokemon, and they're blown away by the fact that we just do this on a voluntary basis. And you know, we were talking about it, and the thing that we both kind of agreed on is, you know, for good or for bad, based off of what players get from events, is really the impression they have of Pokemon as a company and as a brand, because that's all they see is just us. Which at some points is kind of a scary thing to think about. And thinking about past events, how things have gone, it's a little frightening to know that that's how people base their opinions. So at that point, what we started discussing that we needed to go over today was really, you know, two of the simple, the most basic points of judging. Is your appearance and your attitude at the events, how we present ourselves to players, and well, how we present ourselves to players and each other. I mean, we've all had days where we walk into a venue and it hasn't been a good day, and the outlook is not getting any better as the day goes on. I know I've been guilty of that. I know a couple other people have been guilty of that. Of just, you know, it's been a bad day, you're dealing with stress at home, everything else, and you just carry it into the event and go from there. And, you know, attitude influences everything that goes on during the event. I mean, it influences how you're going to deal with the people at the computer. It influences whether somebody's going to drive you nuts quick enough that you go off the handle and yell at them while they're at the computer.
Guilty.
Yes, you are. I mean, it deals with how you're going to interact with the players through rulings, everything else. I mean, it's just, if the players see that the judges are having a miserable day, it's going to transfer to the players. I mean, because the players aren't going to be really wanting to deal with the grumpy judges, so they're not going to be calling us for anything. So at that point, your players are going to be mad because they had issues and they were afraid to call the judges because they were afraid they were going to get their heads bit off. I mean, you know, one of the things that I've had to tell one of our judges, because he was having a bad day one day, is, you know, if you're having a bad day, if it's that bad, tell me you don't want to judge, because I'd really rather be short a judge than have you on the floor biting at people. And I'm sure Ron probably had the same thoughts about me sometimes, that he'd rather me just leave. I mean, just if you're having enough issues that you really don't think you can be a productive member on the judge staff or on the staff for the event, let us know. We'll figure it out. We'll be short a person on the floor or whatever, just so that we can make things easier for everybody involved. When you approach a game, you have to have the right attitude when you're approaching a game. Number one, don't make the players feel like you've inconvenienced them, because then they're going to quit calling judges over and you're going to have players mad about games for that reason. When you have players that put their hand up, go to the person that's got their hand in the air. Listen to what they have to say. Ask them what's going on. Listen to what they're saying. Don't let the other players start butting in and trying to turn it into a he said, she said kind of thing. Listen to the first player that called you over. Talk to the second player. Get their side of everything. if it's something that you have to talk to another judge or that you feel better talking with another judge on, get away from the games. Not just the one you're talking about, but just get away from everything.
Yeah. Notate the time when you walk away.
Yeah, notate the time. I mean, it's not unusual anymore for a tournament that you have people that either judge or that are professors, whatever, sitting and playing instead of being out on the floor working. And there's been so many times that, you're sitting and discussing a game and you'll have somebody else that's in the middle of their game decide they want to interject their opinion on what's going on. And so now you've got two games that are getting screwed up with because of that. When you're talking to another judge about the call, if they don't know who's involved with the call because they weren't there for the initial thing, just refer to them as player A and B. That way it doesn't bring any names into it. Nobody knows, none of the other people know who you're talking about. Especially if it's somebody, if it's like a family member or something else, that way they don't know who's A and B. Just pick a side. If you get into something if you get into a call that you have to make that just eats at you, talk to the TO, talk to the head judge, whatever, and just take a break. A couple of years ago in New Mexico, I ended up having to disqualify a 7-year-old because of something that happened before the match started, and I hated the call. I ended up giving all my stuff to Ron and just leaving the floor for 10 or 15 minutes because I just needed to get away from the floor. And
it was a rough call for him to make. But, that's why we keep reminding the players, you guys earn these penalties. We don't just give them because we like to. If you have messed things up, it was yours and your opponent's responsibility to keep track of things. So if it's gotten to a point where a penalty of greater value, prize penalties or disqualification even because of some terrible thing at the match, they've earned it. We don't walk over there with the attitude we're giving them to them. We walk over there with how can we avoid writing on that piece of paper and turning those names in, because it's a pain in the butt. It really is. I don't like writing penalties. I try to avoid writing penalties, and it irritates the pee out of me when somebody tells me I have to write down all my cautions, because that takes time for me to sit down and fill that out, number one. I have to list both players' names, pop IDs, the whole works, the scenario that the caution was given for. While I'm doing that, I'm not watching other games and responding to any other needs. That's an irritation. Then, yeah, we need to keep track for escalation issues. But, sometimes you walk away from these things going, this is not going to happen again. This is done. Kid retreated out of sleep, or, he played 2 supporters on the same turn, and you were able to rewind the second one or whatever. Fine. Just, you find a way to get away from it. And I don't like writing it. And as a head judge, the head judges are supposed to report these things. We've been fortunate that the TOs have stepped up and said, just give me the stuff. Make sure I have all the information. I'll report it for you. Dwayne did that with me. I don't know. He probably has, if you've written anything up.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. As a TO, I don't like sending those reports in.
Second thing to discuss is appearance. Again, nothing that I've had a problem with anybody with, but anybody that's been judging for a long time or been playing for a long time and watching us weird judges know full well that back in the old days, judges wore whatever because we didn't have judge shirts, we didn't have polo shirts. Sometimes you'd see people wearing league leader shirts, Professor Teaser polos, whatever they had. Sometimes a lab coat, maybe.
Yeah.
Sometimes nothing to do with Pokemon. Nowadays, a lot of the judges, most of the judges either have the judge shirts or the lab coats. The judges are getting a more professional look, and that's it started out at Worlds, really. That was the main area where the judges were always wearing the lab coats at Worlds. It's always been a thing there. And it's translated down to Nationals. We're no longer wearing just the regular generic staff t-shirts. We're wearing the judge shirts there as well. They started doing that in 2007 when you were there. They started going to judge shirts.
I think so.
Now they have them through the professor store, so if you're a professor and you're earning points, you can get the shirts there. So we're gonna, you know, it's good that everybody's starting to look more professional in their judging. Because I mean, you know, even if somebody looks somewhat professional, you're gonna just kind of give them a little more credibility on their knowledge. I mean, if you get somebody that looks like they just came out of the alley from where they hang out all the time, I mean, you're going to look at them and be like, okay, I don't think I want you near me. You probably don't know what you're talking about at all. I mean, it gives them a little more credibility. Nationals and Worlds are the only events that have specific.
We want you to have the certain appearance that you are here, you're credible, and you are doing your job. If you can't abide by those requirements for us, you can go sit with all the players and end up playing the rest of the time. So, it's just because, as we said, we are the face of Pokemon for a lot of people here. How we portray ourselves makes a difference on how some of these parents who sit and watch their kids play think about Pokemon too. Is this a game they want their kids to be more involved with? It may make a decision for them if we all show up and we're in bad moods, we haven't combed our hair for the day, we're not wearing our judge shirts. You know, there's a lot of things that can sway a parent from bringing their child back to an event.
Yeah.
And Wayne and I were talking about that. We went around a few hours discussing, you know, how really it is important. And attitude came into it, and we started saying, well, you know, let's start with the judge manual. If you have access to the Pokemon forums, go in there and read the basic judge qualifications. It covers a lot of good stuff in here. It really does. There is a code of ethics for professors. If you haven't read that, read it.